Welcome to another podcast of the Jimmy Rex Show, and I am here today with a close friend of mine. This is Brad Jensen. He is the owner and founder of Key Nutrition. And Brad, it is a miracle we are sitting here today, bud.
It is.
About 6 years ago, now 7 years ago, I ran into Brad. And at the time, we're going to kind of get into Brad's story because it's really one that, well, for me, I take it's just such a blessing to be able to see where he's at in his life now versus where he was. When I first met Brad 7 years ago, we've talked about this. We're going to get into his story a little bit deep here, but Brad was on heroin and all sorts of drugs and was in a really bad spot in his life. And you just celebrated a couple weeks ago 5 years sober now.
Absolutely, I did.
5 years.
By the grace of God.
That is awesome, man. So I want to really talk, first let's talk a little bit about the Key Nutrition. You're a nutritionist. That's how I actually started spending more time with you. Again, we ran into each other at the gym, and then I kind of basically said, I want to know what you're doing because you're in such good shape all the time. Brad, what are you currently 4% body fat or
no,
what?
not probably triple that, but that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, we bumped it. So about Key Nutrition?
Well, no, and so you that's what the reason I reached out to you was just kind of at the time you were a nutritionist for another company, and I just said, hey, I want to get in better shape. And I love talking to you. I think I spent 2 hours just talking to you at the gym. I've never talked to somebody that was so intelligent about nutrition. And I went through your program and everything else, and I ended up going from 21% body fat down to 9% body fat. And we'll get into that a little bit more towards the end of the interview. I really want to kind of get into know you a little bit better. But just to give our audience an idea, how many employees do you have here now, and how long have you been running Key Nutrition for your own company?
So I've been running Key Nutrition since March. After a lot of years at another company, I finally decided to face my fear and take a leap. And so it's been great. You know, we started off with a good infrastructure, and we got eight people working for me now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's from literally, 5 years ago, I visited you. 6 years ago, I guess, when you were in the middle of everything in jail, if you remember.
I do. I vaguely remember.
I actually bailed you out once.
Oh, I remember.
So tell that.
And then I didn't pay the bail.
Yeah, you
and
tried
then
to
the bounty
jump
hunters
bail.
were going to... Poor Jimmy.
Oh.
Nicest guy. And
by the way, don't ever, if you're listening to this, don't ever bail your friends out of jail. It's not what they actually need. I was just trying to help at the time. I didn't know any differently. But I want to dive more back. Let's back up in your story, though. I think it's important people see where you came from, and then we're going to dive into kind of how you built this great company that you're running today. But so you grew up in Murray, and then at what age did you start having your first run-ins with drugs and things like that, bro?
You know, so I remember, I make a joke that I feel like I came out of the womb just restless and irritable and discontent. Just always by nature as a kid, I remember just feeling like I didn't quite fit in. Everyone else would be out there and I'd be with them, but I just felt like I was always on the outside looking in. And I remember just always kind of feeling this void inside, and I wasn't sure what it was. And about 12 years old, I had my first drink of alcohol at a buddy's house. His parents were, going through a wild phase, would leave us alone. And I remember taking that drink, and I remember how awful it was going down my throat. But then I remember once the feeling kicked in, I remember just taking just a deep breath. And it was like for once I was just okay for that brief second being Brad. Mm-hmm. And, from there it just progressed, and so that about 12 years old is when I started getting into it.
So 12 years old, that's so young, right?
Right.
And so what happened? So then from there,
and I come from a good family too. It wasn't like I come from the hood. I came from a really loving, good family, and at 12 years old, took that drink, and it was like, all right, cool. It was almost this kind of well, that's what I've been looking for, and it just progressed. And I remember. And I was still a good kid. My parents had no idea that on weekends I was drinking alcohol as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old. And, as I got into high school, and during that phase too, I think it's important to know in junior high, I went through that awful chubby phase that a lot of before you've hit that growth and height. And I was picked on, and it was a little bit lonely place to be, which is also where I found my passion for fitness. But
And so during so those are the toughest years anyway, right? 7th, 8th grade. I mean, you're just so self-conscious about everything. And so you were dealing with having self-image issues as well. And was that kind of part of why it sounds like to you drinking kind of became more of a release, and you could kind of just be free of who you
Absolutely,
wanted to be?
yeah. And I knew, what's funny was at that time I got more and more into partying, kind of the drinking scene, and I'm talking a drinking scene, and I'm a 9th grader. And keep in mind, my parents had no clue. And I think this happens more than people really want to open their eyes to admit. And it was interesting at that time is when I also started to find my love for fitness and nutrition. And I'd take my bike to Barnes & Noble, a bike. This was like when AOL had to
Sure, yeah.
It would have been a lot easier nowadays, but in 1998, I had to take my bike. I took my bike to Barnes & Nobles, and I started picking up every book and magazine that I could on fitness and nutrition, and it fascinated me. It was the first time in my life that I truly felt passionate about something. I was fascinated by it. So I started creating my own meal plans. I mean, I'm taking tuna fish and brown rice to school as a sophomore in high school, and I'm eating
it back before it was cool to do such things.
Yeah, it was not cool then to meal prep. Meal prepping was not a thing yet.
You were the weird kid at that point.
Right. But what I saw was my body change, and I was even more fascinated by it. I was fascinated by this food and these workouts could change your physique, and I just started exploring. I couldn't put books down. I started exploring more and more and more. And during that time, too, I had realized that drinking was not going to help my fitness goals.
Sure.
I'd realized, okay, that's going to be bad. And I knew the calories were just empty, and so, but I still didn't like being me, Jimmy. I still didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. The outside was starting to look better, but I still had this discontentness in my soul, and that's when, at about a sophomore, one of my friends said, well, hey, come to this party, and I said, I don't really want to go because I don't want to drink. And he said, well, here, try this pain pill. And that's when it changed. That was the second thing in my life that I'd ever felt passionate about.
Okay. And so I want you to kind of, if you will, open up, because I think so many people, hopefully, that have had the same similar experiences that you had. This is not an uncommon story, I don't feel like, right? And so you take this pain pill, and tell us kind of what happened then. Tell us from that point to how you ended up in prison. I think that's an important gap in what happened in that portion of your life.
Yeah, I took that pain pill, and I remember thinking, this is what I've been looking for. The combination of looking good on the outside and then this pill, and I chased that, and as a junior and senior in high school, and keep in mind, all this being said, my good Mormon faith still had no idea. What I wasn't failing in school. I kept up on all that, and it just progressed. It's a progression. It gets worse, never better. That's been my experience with people who truly suffer from the disease of alcoholism and addiction.
Sure.
And I didn't know that at the time, but by a senior in high school, I was making runs down to Mexico and back, and I was full-blown hooked on Oxycontin. I didn't know I was hooked at that moment. I didn't know because I always had some. And my senior year of high school, I went down with a bunch of guys that I thought were really cool, a few years older than me, and went down to Lake Havasu, and I had forgot my pills when I got down there, and I started to get sick. And I thought I was just getting the flu. I didn't know what withdrawals were. And at that moment, when you don't have the opiates and you've been doing them, you get physically ill. And this guy looked at me and he said, well, you're detoxing, man. You're withdrawing. I said, what's that? And he said, you need some opiates. And so he pulled out some heroin. And I said, oh, no, I don't do heroin. That's gross. I'm a little better than that.
Yeah, sure.
And he said, it'll make you feel so much better. And I said, okay, give it to me. And the first time I ever tried heroin, I went right to it, and I shot it up. I IV'd it, and I remember just immediately feeling better. And the guy looked at me and said, your life will never be the same, kid. And I'll never forget those words, because it truly wasn't.
So did your life at that point where it would never be the same? What did that mean? Like looking back now, what was next in your life? What kind of came after that?
A lot of incomprehensible demoralization, honestly. I think it's such an epidemic here in Utah, and I think it's important to talk about. And I think it happens to so many good families. Like this wasn't because I was raised wrong.
Well, and when you were in the middle of all that, I was close with I'm close with your sister. I was, somewhat close with your mom. And I just saw how every single person that was trying to help you, nobody really knows what to do because you're getting so much. It's so frustrating, right? Like you ignore the phone calls. I remember one time I invited you, if you don't mind, I share this. I'm just trying to get some examples of kind of how it is, like as a friend or as a family member. I invite you to the jazz game. You're a giant jazz fan. And I had
this one.
Well,
I still have pictures from that.
Yeah, it's not a good photo necessarily, but I have courtside seats. I think they were $1,200 a piece. My buddy had invited me, and he said, invite one other person. I said, you know what, I want to do something for Brad. And I was just trying to help out as a bud, And you ended up standing me up. We went to go pick you up. You're like, I'm late. I'll meet you there. And it was about halfway through the first quarter. I finally called you, and I was like, dude, if you don't come up and take this seat, I'm never gonna forgive you. Like you're gonna make me look so bad in front of these guys. And then you showed up at halftime, but you were high as a kite, and it was just that was the night I was like, wow, man, I know how bad you wanted to go to that game. I know how bad you wanted to, use those seats on the court side. And so that's the first time it hit me, like, man, this thing is like got control of him. But
well, I owe you an apology for that. That was actually
no, we're way
mortifying
past apologizing.
Yeah, on the front row, and I'm so high on cocaine that I can't even think straight or put a word together.
Yeah. What were some of the lowest moments when you were at this low in your life, when you were really hooked on heroin after that experience in Lake Havasu? Give us an example of how bad it can be. Because in Utah, a lot of my audience is Utah. A lot of people have no exposure to drugs, and other people have huge exposure. But those that are listening that maybe have never even understood any of this, because I know I hadn't. Like, you're the first guy I knew, being honest, that like I was like there like while he had this issue, and what are some of those things? What are some of those moments like? Give us an example.
It's the great equalizer. It doesn't care if you're black, white, purple, rich, poor. It doesn't care. Addiction doesn't discriminate. And, it was, that was probably 2009, right?
Yeah, that was about right, 2010.
So I went to my first treatment center in 2005, and I realized I had a problem. But what I thought I had a problem with was just heroin. And what I found out is I had a problem with everything. And mainly, I had a problem with Brad. Like, I didn't know who I was as a person, and I kept looking for something to numb that. And I remember, it kept getting worse, never better. And I would have periods of sobriety, just long enough, 30, 60 days. And I think it's important that people hear that, because I know the dance that people do. But the pull was so great. I kept going back to it, thinking somehow this time will be different. Like, this time will be different. Keep in mind, the time before, I escaped from a hospital, and I'm trying to, because I overdosed, and my whole family's there worried I'm gonna die, and I sneak out in a gown, and I'm going down Bangerter Highway in a gown with no shoes on, and the cops pull up, and they say, hey, you need to get back in the car, Brad. And I'm like, oh, not me. And I said, dude, you're the only guy in a hospital gown. You need to get in the car. And I said, you got the wrong guy. And they said, just get in the car, dude. We need to take you back. We're worried about you. But somehow I thought, I got sober for 60 days, and I thought this time will be different. I'll control and enjoy my using. Maybe I'll just go to the bars. Maybe I'll just do this drug and not that. I'll lay off the hard stuff. And I kept going back. And shortly after that game we went to, I think it was about 3 months later, it was going into the spring there in 2009, I was living out of my car. And I lived in my car for 2 months. And I lived there, and I would sleep in my car, and then my car got impounded. So not only did I lose my car, I lost my home. And so,
at the same time.
My sobriety date is November 20th of 2012, and for that I'm extremely grateful. But I was living in my car in 2009.
Okay.
Do the math. 3 more years it took me to get sober. And I just, it got worse, never better. I would do long periods in jail, of which you'd come see me, thank you.
And it's one of those things I'm like, I didn't know what to do. I'd like never had a buddy that I knew that was going through that, right? Like my friends that I'd been, raised with or whatever, I'd never had a buddy that I knew of that was like in and out of jail and rehab and all these things. And so I didn't really know how to support you necessarily. All I knew was like, I needed to just try to still be your buddy, and so that's what I was doing.
You didn't know you were enabling, and honestly, that you were trying to help out, but you got smart towards the end. You wouldn't help me anymore.
I quit helping you because, I think your sister or somebody called me and was like, okay, listen, here's what's going on. When you bail him out, he goes back to. I'm like, oh, got it. I'll quit doing it. Plus, you weren't going to pay the one time. It was going to cost me like $10,000 at a time.
When the bounty hunters are coming to chase me and then they're calling you, that's not good.
That was when I decided I was probably good.
Yeah, that was probably a smart choice.
Well, fast forward a little bit. I mean, in this time frame, what was your family like? Well, let's stay there for a second. What was your family like? How did it affect relationships in your life with your family when you were using and in and out of?
Oh, I mean, just destructive. I look at I think of the addict as a tornado going through people's lives, and they're just in the middle, and it's just swiping everything out. I mean, literally, my parents, who will be celebrating 40 years of marriage, almost got a divorce over me because my mother almost loved me to death. Mm-hmm. She wanted so bad to help me that she kept bailing me out of everything, making sure that I, had a little money of which I would lie to her what I would spend it on. And my dad told her, if you do that anymore, like, I'm done. And looking back, like, the selfishness and self-centeredness of an addict is just phenomenal to me. I almost ruined, a marriage and just a struggle. I mean, by the end, to give you an idea, I had done a year in jail from 2011 to the very beginning of 2012. And during that time, built back up some relationships with my family, renewed some hope. They were hopeful. I was hopeful. And I'd say the words on the phone in the jail, this is it for me. Like, I'm done. This is the longest I've ever done in jail, the longest I've ever been sober or dry. And I said, I'm done. And I meant it. I meant it. And, I got out on January 26th of 2012. My birthday is January 31st. My parents were so excited. We're gonna have the first time you've been sober in years for your birthday.
Yeah.
Having a whole party planned. And January 30th, it came back, and I hadn't done any actual work. I'd just been dry. I hadn't actually had I hadn't changed who I was as a human. I hadn't done the work. And I made the call to the drug dealer, and I couldn't even lie to myself that this time was be different. I got that stomach in my feeling, and I just don't go. And I got in the car and I went, and I'm crying the whole way there because I know that this time will not be different. I know what happens when I start using. Everything goes down. I couldn't lie to myself, and I still went and did it. And needless to say, I did not show up to my own birthday party the next day.
Wow.
And, my family cut me off. And because of them doing that, and I think it's really important that people know that, my parents cutting me off and telling me, we love you, but until you actually want to get sober, we can't have you around, was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Was that your rock bottom when you missed your own birthday party?
I think but then I didn't stop. I went that next year, from that day until I got sober in November, so about 11 months, 10 months, was the worst 10 months of my life. My family was done enabling me. I started linking up with people that I never thought I would. I was running around with some white supremacists. I was, they called me Pretty Boy on the streets. That's not a cool street name, just so you know. Like, other guys were named like Crazy and Loco, and then they'd call me Pretty Boy. I was like, can I get a new street name? That's not, like, new street name.
That's funny.
When I was running around with a pretty gnarly crowd, like, even things to that point that I thought, well, I'll never do. And I saw some really, really horrible things happen during that year. And, you know, my family they just said, we are not going to bail you out this time. I'd been to 5 treatment centers by that point. I'd been to jail. I can't even tell you how many times. And they just said, like, we can't do anything for you. Like, when you're sober for 30 days, you can call us and we can chat. And it got worse and worse. And usually something intervened. The cops, my parents, rehab, something. And nothing intervened. Like, it just kept going. And now looking back, I think it was God finally allowing me to not just hit a rock bottom, but to really sit in it, you know? And my rock bottom, like, I was living in a hotel this time, not my car. So, like, I don't know if the physical circumstances were worse, but I think the gift of desperation that I received on November 20th is that the drugs stopped working, no matter how much. I mean, and you know, and I was doing heroin, I was doing methamphetamines, I was trying to anything I could get my hands on to alter this, you know, to numb myself inside. And it stopped working. Like, I remember I couldn't put enough drugs in me to fill the hole. Wow. And I think it, you know, and then that's when I finally decided to make a change.
And so November 20th, 2012?
Yeah.
And that was your day. Well, and so you've been sober for 5 years. From that day forward, you started building your life back up. And I mean, how does that feel to look back now where you were? Because I honestly was waiting for the phone call. I thought you were going to die in that year. Like, yeah. I was just waiting for it. I met you once at a motel just to see how you were doing, I think, if you remember.
I do. It was a Motel 6 in Midvale.
I don't even know why. I just went to check on you, and I, like, left there, like, basically in tears, just thinking, I might not ever see that guy again, you know? And anyway, but then all of a sudden it was like you got this, you know, this entire life changed around. And so what became your big why once you got sober? Obviously, I mean, you've not only have you gotten sober, you've built this great life. You just got married to a beautiful woman.
Yeah, way above my league.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
And and then you also, you know, I mean, you're killing life. You're doing business. You guys are kind of getting ready to have a kid here. You know, is what you're kind of thinking is the next process in life. And you've helped so many people in your life. Now that's what you do. Like, I know for me, I've always kind of been a little bit out of shape, you know, more than I want to be. And it was for the first time in my life when I started working with you. And I saw how this was 2 years ago, but I saw how you run your business. You're not only just running a business, but you were killing it. Like, you were so good at what you're doing. You're so good at it. I went down to 9% body fat, and everybody, I've referred like 20 friends to me because they all saw me and they were like, all right, what are you doing? Anyway, but so what's become your big why to keep sober and to stay sober? How does that, and is it a daily struggle still, or is it kind of now you've got your why, you got your purpose and you go forward?
You know, so when November 20th came, and I actually ended up in the back of a cop car after my grandfather's funeral, carrying his own, and I believe there was some kind of, and I didn't go to jail for long, but just long enough. And I remember thinking in the back of the cop car, I told the cop, I said, I'm actually excited to go, I'm done. And he says, you know how many times I've heard that from the back of a cop car? And I said, you know how many times I've said that from the back of a cop car? And I remember, you know, so I had gotten involved, I got my personal training certificate when I was still in high school, and it's really the only job I've ever done. So when I talk about these years of incomprehensible demoralization there was periods in there where I was still working, like up until about 2009 when it got really bad. Like, I was able to hold a job and kind of look okay, but then, when I left work, it was just a mess. Yeah. So I'd been ingrained in the fitness community with personal training, and then I started working, you know, doing more nutrition consulting. And so I knew I loved it then, but I loved drugs and alcohol more. That was the problem. And, when I got sober, I got out of jail with nothing to my name. I had a garbage sack with one pair of clothes and clothes on me, and I went to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and I remember sitting in that meeting thinking, like, one day, like, this is going to be my time. I'm going to get back doing what I love. And it was never a question if I was going to get back into the field I'm in now. Mm-hmm. It was just how quick I was going to get there. So I started waiting tables right away because it was the only job that would hire me right away. and built up a little bit of credibility enough, 60 days sober, that I got my foot back in the door in this industry. And, it's funny, my mom always says, you have such a high IQ. And I said, no, bullshit, I don't. I don't. I know my lanes. And I'm telling you what, if you want to talk about recovering from drugs and alcohol and what that looks like, or nutrition and fitness, like, I'm all about it. Let's go there. But if you want to talk politics or anything else, like, you will never hear me so quiet because I don't know that much.
But there's some genius in that, right? Like knowing, I mean, that's why I wanted to get you on, both to talk about your recovery, but then also to talk about, as a nutritionist that, I think is as good as anyone I've ever seen or met, talk nutrition. And that is your expertise. And you've recognized that. I always say, focus, becoming an expert, becoming great at something requires extreme focus on that one thing.
Right.
And that's kind of what you've done with the nutrition stuff.
Yeah, I knew I loved it because it's the only thing that ever excited me as a kid in school. Barely got good enough grades to get by, but I knew that this fascinated me. And, I started doing it again, and I absolutely have a love for just helping people, seeing the light come on, being able to, I really excites me. I dig everything about it. I think that, I got back into it and immediately hit the ground running. And I think it was huge for my early recovery, my sobriety, to see that I could make a difference in someone else's life, whether they were paying me for it or not.
Well, that's, I think, the 12th step of AA, right, is to give back or help somebody else.
Yeah.
Essentially. But that whole idea of, the whole Tony Robbins, life is about contributing. As soon as you're able to start helping other people, that gets addicting in and of itself, becomes a new addiction.
Right.
The addiction of helping others.
Absolutely.
And in your career, I think that's a blessing that you have, is that's what you get to see all day long as person. I mean, how many people have you now helped hit their fitness goals or lose weight that have come in to see you in the last 5 years?
In the thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what a gift to see that every day, right? I mean, every single day, that's what you're doing.
Absolutely. I love everything. I love helping people truly get a lifestyle change. And I realized that, making a difference in someone else's life was really valuable to me and important. And so I also continue to, give back what was so freely given to me in 12-step rooms, and be able to help other guys, expecting nothing in return.
So you go every week to AA?
Oh yeah, I'm still in Grant. I go to actually have a men's meeting here on Tuesday nights, and I still have my regular one group. I was going to 7 meetings a week the first year.
Wow.
And you know what? But I'm still really regular at 2 meetings a week, and I think it's important for me to go back and give back and show the newcomer, the guy that was in my shoes with 5 days sober, like, you can do this too, because my story was not pretty. And I was of the hopeless variety. Like, I was the junkie that everyone wrote off for good reason. And I found that I was just so passionate about this line of work, helping people really have a practical lifestyle change, like not a fad, not a phase, how to do it right, how to educate people. I was working for a different company and did really well there, and kind of saw I hit my ceiling. Mm-hmm. It's about as much as I'm going to do. I can only cram so many people in 1 week. And I remember having the thought, well, just go start your own thing. And then that fear kicks in that says, well, you can't do it.
Yeah, we talked. You talked to me.
Oh yeah,
talked
to you about
times,
it. Yeah, and I started kind of thinking about this change, and I remember just thinking that, fear, an acronym for fear, you can face everything and recover, or F everything and run. And I felt like I wasn't facing I was letting fear get in the way. And so
How did you overcome that fear? I mean, because it was that you talked to me about it for about a year. You were really feeling like you needed to take things to the next level, but obviously with no run. It was your first business you've ever ran on your own or whatever, minus the the hustle you were
yeah,
or whatever. But so how did you get over that fear? How did you overcome that?
What happened is I because of going through recovery, because of getting to know who I am, what I value, what's important to me, it just wasn't sitting right with me. And I realized I was getting more unhappy doing what I love. And the situation wasn't the best at the place I was at, but I continued to stay in it. And you know, I remember, you know, listening to this podcast and it said comfortability was never happiness. And I was like, man, I'm just staying so complacent and comfortable.
I want to say that again. Comfortability was never happiness.
Right.
I love that. You know, a similar quote that I always say is, everything you want in life is on the other side of comfortability.
Yeah. Right.
It just is. I mean, it's very easy to sit home and do nothing, be comfortable, and just kind of let life kind of go by. But all the rewards you get in life are when you put yourself out there and you put yourself in these uncomfortable spots. I think that's how we grow as people. Right?
Absolutely.
Like even me doing the podcast, or like, you know, I did, you know, anything. I threw this party last Saturday for Operation Underground Railroad, the Black Tie Gala, and it was a lot of effort. You know, the comfortable person would have sat back and done nothing. Like I had to make this uncomfortable decision to make 800 phone calls to put a party together and organize this whole thing. And like, what if it's not good? What if people don't have a good time? What if they don't raise enough money? But you just plow through that, and all the rewards and blessings and the feeling you get when you know you've done a great job, I think come from that. So I think that I wanted to really highlight what you just said there, because I think it's such an important piece. And the fact that you got that from a podcast is kind of cool. I hope somebody listening to this, you know, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this, was to get these messages out to people.
Well, I think it's great. You know, I remember I was sitting with a client, and he said, "Why don't you go out and do your own thing, man? I mean, you know, you got a great client base. You know, like, go do your own thing." And I said, "Oh, it's just a lot of work." And he says, "You know, getting in shape's a lot of work too, but you make me do it."
That's good.
And I remember at that moment, I kind of had this shift, and you know, it was funny. What had to happen was my sister, who's also my assistant and runs everything on the front end here, who is amazing. She was also at the old place we were at, and she quit, and because things weren't going right. And when she quit, it was just the tipping point. I was already almost there, and I said, "If I start a place, will you work for me?" And she said, "Absolutely." And I said, "Let's go." And I just jumped. You know, I thought about my recovery, and I just had to jump all 2 feet in and just go. And you know what? If I sink, if I swim, like, I just got to jump.
Yep.
So I jumped, you know, when it helped, I sat down with people like you months before, and you told me, like, if it all aligns, like the finance, like, you can do this. You believed in me. Other guys that I highly respect told me, like, you can do it. If you want to put your mind, like, if you want to do it, you can. And we jumped over and we started it, and it's, I've been overwhelmed with how successful it's been. And I think it has so much to do with the great team I have around me. I was able to hire a staff, but I'm telling you, like, me being spiritually fit, because that's what being in recovery means to me today, is that, like, I'm thinking about what can I do for somebody else, what can I pack into the stream of life, because I was a taker my whole life. I took thousands of dollars from you.
I got a lot of free training once you
that's part of the amends process. You know, I said, "Jimmy, I was 8 months sober. I said, I can't repay you because I don't have any money right now, but I'll train you for free." And so he took me up on it. And because of that, I believe that I was in tune enough spirit. I got the right people, and I got great people around me. And, you know, we got about 250 clients, 260 clients coming in and out of here every week.
Wow, that's great.
And it's, you know, I remember thinking, I still, you know, being a drug addict, and you know, I was selling drugs too for a while. That's the ultimate entrepreneurship. Like, I had to grind every single day to make sure that I had enough, so the next morning I didn't wake up dope sick. And, like, I did it somehow.
Yeah, there is like a business side to that whole thing, right? Like, you probably learned so many business principles, unfortunately, in a horrible setting, but when you jumped into this, I mean, I'm sure you were still learning and hustling even then, and so it wasn't like a completely foreign thing to start your own business, I guess, at that.
No,
if that makes sense.
No, you know what? And I'm lucky that I had great people to lean on, and, you know, and I consume a lot of content, but I remember kind of relating. I'm like, if I can't, somehow I supported a $150 heroin habit a day with no job for a full year. Some of it was criminal activity, but
We won't get into
yeah.
that.
You know, but honestly, it was, and so I knew I could do it, and I knew that I think my experience going through all that, I'm seeing now even more why I went through it. Like, you know.
Yeah, you're able to see a lot of blessings that you're able to empathize with a person and get in their position when somebody comes in here and maybe they have a certain fitness goal, right? And they don't quite hit it, or they fail with what they cheated on their diet. I mean, you've so many times been in that situation where you were trying to make a drastic change and you kept failing backwards, but yet you progressed forward and eventually got there.
And a lot of times it wasn't because I didn't want to.
Right.
I wanted to with every fiber of my being. I just didn't know how, and I wasn't willing to cross that fear barrier to find out how.
Well, and I think that's a great place for us to transition into how I want to get into, because you are a nutrition expert, and I want to get into that a little bit. I want to get your background so people could tell, you know, just how much this means to you, because you truly are an expert here. And so I want to kind of dive into that for just a minute. So I know kind of when I started talking to you about nutrition and things like that, you have a program. Explain a little bit of exactly how you do it for people. Somebody comes in, they're not happy with how they look, or they're not happy with their diet. How exactly does your program work for people? What do you do as a nutritionist?
So, you know, the whole motto of Key Nutrition really, you know, is it has to be a sustainable approach to be a maintainable result. If the approach isn't sustainable, the results won't be maintainable. And what I mean by that is that like, the practicality of this has to be there. And I think that's where people fail. They jump to whatever's, you know, and whatever's the latest fad or this or that. And we're talking extremes. You know, I don't want you, you know, if your list of things that you can eat is this big, you know, small, and then what you can't is pages long, you might want to look at that, okay? So what we do is we create customized meal plans and workout plans for clients, and that's customized to them. There's no cookie cutter program. You know, it's all based off of you, your food likes, your dislikes, where you're gonna be at that time of day, what your schedule is. And so there's no one same program. I mean, I was writing programs for you, and you ate out literally every day. So we had to map out
business lunches
places,
and then dinners on dates and things like that.
Places to eat, but you were able to do it. You were able to customize the portions. Like, that's what we do. Is it has to be a practical approach, and I think that's where a lot of people fail.
So the first thing is it's got to be something practical. But what if, like, a lot of people, because for years I tried to be in shape and I thought I was eating healthy, like eating granola bars, right? And
right.
Macaroni and cheese I thought was healthy. That sounds dumb now, but I did. Or like milk, right?
Yeah.
Like all these things that I thought were super healthy. So what advice do you have somebody that's listening? They're like, well, okay, well, like I have no idea where to even start. Minus like hiring a nutritionist, which is a great step. Obviously, I recommend that to anybody that wants to really take it serious. But let's say they're not in a position where they can yet. What are some little things that people can know about nutrition that would be huge stepping stones to get them into better shape?
So first off, and you're going to hear different theories. The thing about, I think, that gets confusing with nutrition is that, you know, even being in the industry as long as I'm always fascinated by how much new stuff comes. You can read one thing, oh, carbs are bad, they're good. No, they're this, they're that, do keto, don't do, like, and I think from my experience, what some people can do is first off, break your meals into 5 or 6 smaller meals, at least, and maybe even 4 to 5 if you're eating 2 big ones a day. You know, how a sumo wrestler purposely gains that much weight in Japan is people think, oh, they must eat all day. But actually, they have mastered the arts of damaging their metabolism. They starve themselves all day, and they eat a huge meal of 7,000 calories of carbs and fat at night, then they go to bed. Now, it's an extreme example, but some of the heaviest people I have on my couch for an evaluation, that's their story. They say, I can't really figure it out. I don't eat breakfast, and then I have a granola bar at like 11. Sometimes I eat lunch, sometimes I don't, but then I eat a pretty big dinner, but I stay within my calorie range, and then I'm just keep gaining weight. I can't figure it out. So breaking your meals into smaller, more frequent portions.
And what does that do? What's your body doing as you break it into smaller meals? Like, why does that work as opposed to just eating one day? Why does it matter how you consume the calories?
Well, because what it's going to do is the more frequent small meals you can do, the more stable you're going to be able to keep blood sugar levels in your body. And it's really important that you're eating a balance of carbs, fats, and proteins. Okay, those will create this thermogenic effect in your body. Which is essentially the body creating heat, breaking down calories. So the smaller, more frequent meals Going to keep your blood sugar more stable. Your energy levels will be far more consistent, efficient. You're going to get better appetite control, so you're not left starving and overeat. Your blood sugar is going to stay more stable, so from a physiological standpoint, your cravings will stay lower. You know, if you're apt to emotionally eat or stress eat, I can't promise to cure that, but I can promise you that if your blood sugar is all over the map and you hit a stressful situation, you're almost going to tank every time. So from my experience, the metabolism seems to respond a lot better to more free, instead of 2,100 calories in 2 meals, break that into 5.
And as you keep the metabolism high, that helps you burn calories all day long. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, people often think of the metabolism as a function of fast or slow, and it's not. If you can think of it as a function as hot or cold, you will get the theory. And so we have to put enough heat on the furnace, so to speak, to keep it moving. So while we need to eat at a caloric deficit, meaning a little under what we could probably eat to maintain, really people will go too low, and that's where they run into a lot of metabolic damage, the metabolism completely is just not having to respond because they're eating less and less and less. So I think it's really key for people to understand, like, you have to eat enough of the right foods, more frequently to get that thermogenic effect, to get the furnace going, so to speak.
Makes sense. Okay. And why is sugars, because one of the main things that you taught me was to cut sugars out. And why is sugar so damaging to somebody trying to lose weight?
Well, I mean, first...
Minus the calories itself, but...
Right. I mean, sugar is the great equalizer. That's the enemy. I mean, even people who argue, listen to this saying, oh, why do keto? And honestly, I just want to say that if you're doing something besides eating a cheeseburger, like my hat's off to you. Like, I don't try to get into vicious debates with people that do keto or this or that. Like, if you're doing something to improve your lifestyle, like, my hat's off to you. I think it's great. Sugar's the one that anyone can kind of agree on. I don't think any diet says, oh, sugar's great. The insulin is what's, you think about, diabetes and what it looks like long term when people start losing. I mean, insulin's a really nasty thing, and when you eat sugar, that's when you have this blood sugar response. So a blood sugar spike on steroids is that Thanksgiving dinner filling up, and then everyone's on but it's happening all day when you're eating a couple Twizzlers, or when you go grab your... Jimmy's famous for going into the gas station and getting a bag of, let's say, Mike and Ike's, or getting some. What do you normally get?
Well, I get my donut.
He takes
this is
two
when
bites.
This is when I'm not trying to stay in shape.
Oh no! When you're, I thought you take 2 bites and you throw it in the garbage can on the way out.
But that to me was always like, well, I'm only going to eat 2 bites. That way I get the craving, but I don't fill up on a donut.
Well, I'm actually really impressed you can do that, because a lot of people, just like me with drugs, one's too many, 1,000 never enough. Sugar's very addicting. It makes you crave more. It's insidious. Your energy levels spike up, then crash down. And then when you crash down, you're craving more carbs later. It's really a nasty cycle. And I believe in getting natural sugars from fruit. I think fruit is amazing, the micronutrients in it. Really, what we do at Key is try to create not eating fruit doesn't, I don't think God just screwed up when he made fruit.
Right.
So
like what I was doing when I just go eat I snack some candy or something like that. Why is that so damaging when you're trying to?
Well, your blood sugar spikes, your insulin goes up. Insulin's a storage hormone.
Even if it's just a small amount, right?
Yeah, or insulin's a storage hormone. What's going to happen too is sometimes at 4 o'clock you're craving and you can't figure out why, but it's all people don't correlate it back to 10, or they're really tired at 2, but at 10 o'clock they had some sugar. So
that's basically what's going on. So when people come in, the people that have the most success, what are you helping them do in order to, because everybody wants to be in shape, everybody wants to eat healthy, but just the moment comes and you get, you see the whatever it is that you crave, the cheeseburger for a good example, or the candy bar, the donut, whatever it might be, and you eat it, or you're just you overeat, or you just don't pay enough attention to what you're eating. Those that have the most success, what are some of the key things that they're doing mentally to be able to overcome those cravings?
Mentally?
Yeah.
I think first off, you have to be ready to change. I'll go through an evaluation with somebody, and honestly, I won't take their money if I don't sense there's some, and a lot of times what's unfortunate is that pain is the great motivating factor. People have to usually be in some pain before they're willing to make a big change.
Yeah, Tony Robbins says, everything we do is either to gain pleasure or to avoid pain, and he said pain is much stronger than the pleasure.
Yes, right?
For most people.
And so I think we're motivated by human beings as results. I tell clients that, like, just like when I got sober, my life did not look pretty. I didn't, like the first 30 days, you know, I was living in some guy's basement that probably didn't even want me there. I just told him I had nowhere to go. And, you know, he said, you can stay in my basement, but if you steal from me, I'll kill you. And I said, okay, fair. You know, but it wasn't, and I think clients, you have to go through a little bit of uncomfortability at first. And really, and then embrace the lifestyle. We're motivated by results. The more results you start seeing, you know, whether that's you have more energy with your kids, your pants are fitting better, the scale, the body fat, whatever it is, that little bit of self-confidence, like that's what we're motivated by. So I think it's really key to get there and mentally just remember your why. Like, why are you doing this?
Right.
Like, why I started Key Nutrition was I genuinely have a passion to help people. And I realized that it is far more important to me to make a difference today than to get recognition. I used to want the recognition. Now I just want to help people. And I love making a difference. So
well, I love to hear your why, because that's what it all comes down to, right? You've got to have a purpose that's higher than whatever it is that you've been doing that's holding you back. And so I know, like with me, when I came in and started the program with you, I think my first week I was 21% body fat, and I went hardcore those first 2 weeks, and it was hard, you know, and I saw a little bit of change, but you can't see much in 2 weeks. But then all of a sudden, you know, we did my body fat, and I was down to like 18, and I was like, oh, this is working better than I thought. And the next week it was 17, then it's 16, and you know, then you kind of stall out for a sec, and then it's 15, and then all of a sudden you go 13. You're like, what the heck? This is great, you know. And as I saw it, and people start complimenting you, and all of a sudden the why of getting in shape, that addiction to like the progress and not wanting to go backwards became stronger for me than it did to have my morning donut or whatever it was that was holding me back before.
exactly, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
Dude, yeah, you looked good too.
It looked, come on, I still look okay. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
when
I did look really good back then. I went to Lake Powell. That was my big why, though. You know, I was like, every year, in fact, the year before I'd gone to Lake Powell, and I always kind of wanted to look better than I did. Like so many guys looked, and they were in such good shape. And it was my own insecurities, right? My own, to be a little bit vulnerable. I just was like, I felt like that was holding me back from, you know, really attracting the right women and things like that. Just different things that I had, my own little insecurities. And so I said, okay, next year when I come, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get in shape. And so I started back in like September. And by the time May rolled around, I'd been doing it for about 6 months. And I mean, I was walking around and I was feeling pretty good about myself with 9% body. And it literally, I think from that trip alone, I got you like 6 more guys that wanted to come in.
Yeah. Because I realized a long time ago, my best billboard is not one I pay for a Facebook ad with or an I-15 billboard. My best billboard is my current client.
Yeah.
So I'm very selfish. I was selfishly motivated to help you for me too, because I realized that, you know, nobody's going to be knocking on our doors wanting to come in if our current clients aren't looking really good. So I think just staying on track, like getting the results for you is what kept you motivated and gave you a why during that process. And it's always fun to help clients figure out what is their why, you know? And I think it shifts and evolves, but it's
totally. And that's, I think, what happened with me is like once I like realized that wasn't what was holding me back, right? Like that I was actually fine. It was like more of a lack of confidence. And once I kind of figured that angle out, and all of a sudden things started going well with the women, I kind of lost that old why, and now I want a new why. That's why I've made a commitment in April, the end of April. I'm doing a fitness show, and
Is that the official announcement?
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah.
I've announced it once before. This is
Oh,
happening.
okay.
Yeah, the more people I can announce this to, the more I'm going to do it.
April, FitCon, Jimmy Rex is doing a show. Bring everybody you know. Let's blast this thing.
Yeah, so if I show up,
Jimmy's
at
very
15%
motivated
body
by that.
fat, you know, that's not going to go over very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've always admired that about you, man. That, like, you know, you said you're going to run a marathon in New York. You did it. I don't even know if you trained for it, but you did it.
I didn't, but yeah, I did finish the marathon.
And I believe you'll do a show. And I appreciate examples like you in my life that give me the tenacity to keep going. Like, you know, that's you guys I look up to, and a lot of the guys you've already had on the podcast are guys that I look up to. And you know, so thank you guys for being good entrepreneurs, because I'm just learning how to be that myself.
Well, you're going to see a lot more of us because I got to get training. As soon as I get back, I'm going. I'll start second week in January. That's my time frame to get in shape for the show. So.
Okay.
All right, my friend. This has been a real pleasure for me, man, and I'm just so proud of you as a buddy and as a business partner, and always just somebody that I can now look up to, and I love sharing your story. So thanks for letting me share that to all these people.
Thank you for letting me share it. There is hope.
Thanks, my man.
All right, brother.